The betrayal begins. The house on the cliff. The morning sun painted the Mediterranean Sea in shades of gold and amber. Marina stood on her stone terrace, breathing in the salt air that had been her companion for 35 years. Her villa perched on the cliff like a proud old bird, white walls glowing against the deep blue sky. Every stone, every tile, every window held a memory. This wasn't just a house. This was her heart made visible. She wore her late husband's old cardigan, the one that still smelled faintly of his cologne and pipe tobacco, even after 5 years. Giuseppe had been gone for half a decade, but his presence lived in every corner of this place. They had built it together, mixing cement with dreams, laying tiles with laughter, planting olive trees with hope for the future. Marina touched the rough stone wall of the terrace. These hands had helped place these stones. These feet had walked these paths 10,000 times. At 62, her hair was silver now, but her spirit was still strong. She had survived poverty, war stories from her parents, raising a son alone after Giuseppe's heart gave out, and the crushing loneliness that followed. She had survived everything, or so she thought. The son who forgot. The sound of expensive car tires on gravel broke her peaceful morning. Marina turned to see a sleek black vehicle pulling up the long driveway. Her son Marco stepped out first, tall and handsome in his tailored suit. He looked like his father, but that's where the similarity ended. Giuseppe had possessed warmth. Marco had learned coldness from somewhere Marina couldn't understand. "Mama!" he called, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. It never did anymore. Behind him emerged Alessandra, his wife of 2 years. She was beautiful in the way magazine covers are beautiful, perfect, polished, and somehow empty. Her designer sunglasses probably cost more than Marina's monthly pension. Her heels clicked against the stone path like tiny hammers. "Mother Marina," Alessandra said, air-kissing both of Marina's cheeks without actually touching her. "How quaint you look. Very authentic." Marina had learned that when Alessandra said authentic, she meant poor. "Come inside," Marina said warmly, pushing down the small voice of warning in her chest. "I've made your favorite, Marco. Lasagna. Just like when you were a boy." Marco barely glanced at her. He was already on his phone, typing furiously, his attention a million miles away from this villa, from this mother, from these memories. The meal that changed everything. They sat at the long wooden table Giuseppe had built with his own hands. Marina had set out her best dishes, the ones painted with tiny lemons and olive branches. She had cooked since dawn, preparing everything Marco had loved as a child. The lasagna was perfect, layers of pasta, meat, and bechamel sauce mixed with love and hope. Nobody noticed. Marco ate without looking up from his phone. Alessandra pushed food around her plate like it might contaminate her. "I'm on a cleanse," Alessandra announced. "I don't eat carbs afternoon, or dairy, or anything with a face." She looked at the lasagna with the same expression someone might give to garbage. Marina's heart sank a little, but she smiled. "Of course, dear. I can make you a salad." "Don't bother," Alessandra said, waving her hand dismissively. "I brought my own kelp smoothie in the car. It's the only thing my nutritionist approves." The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable. Marina tried to fill it with questions about their lives in Milan, their work, their friends. Marco answered in grunts. Alessandra answered with complaints. Then Alessandra set down her fork with a sharp clink that echoed through the dining room. The words that cut like knives. "We need to talk," Alessandra began, her voice sweet but her eyes hard as diamonds. "About this situation." "Situation?" Marina asked quietly. "This." Alessandra gestured around the villa with a sweeping motion. "All of this. It's become problematic." Marina felt something cold settle in her stomach. She looked at Marco, waiting for him to defend her, to say something kind. He just scrolled through his phone. Alessandra continued, "Marco and I are building our lives. We're young, successful, and we have important friends. Friends who could help Marco's career. Friends who expect certain standards. I don't understand, Marina said, though she was beginning to. This villa, Alessandra said slowly, as if explaining to a child, is worth a fortune. The location is prime. The views are spectacular. But it's wasted on. She paused delicately. On someone who can't properly maintain it. Marina's hands tightened in her lap. She had maintained this villa perfectly. Every crack was filled, every shutter painted, every garden weeded. She had done it all herself, with her aging hands and stubborn pride. We've been discussing it, Alessandra went on, and we think it's time for you to consider moving, somewhere smaller, more appropriate for someone your age. There are lovely retirement communities. Retirement homes, Marina said flatly. Communities, Alessandra corrected with fake brightness. Places where you'd have people your own age. Activities. Healthcare nearby. You'd be much happier. Marco finally looked up. She's right, Mama. You're getting older. What if you fall? What if something happens? Here, you're all alone. I like being alone, Marina said quietly. And this is my home. Alessandra's smile turned sharp. Actually, that's the other thing we need to discuss. The ownership situation. The truth they didn't know. Marina's heart began to pound, but she kept her face calm. She had learned long ago that silence was sometimes the strongest weapon. Marco is your only child, Alessandra continued, and naturally this property should pass to him. We've spoken to lawyers. The best thing would be to transfer ownership now. For tax purposes. For estate planning. It makes financial sense. We could let you stay here, Marco added quickly, in the guest cottage. We'd convert the main house into something more modern. More functional. Functional, Marina repeated. The word tasted bitter. We're thinking a boutique hotel, Alessandra said, her eyes gleaming. Something exclusive. 5-star. We'd renovate completely. Gut the interior. Put in a pool. A spa. Maybe a restaurant. The profits would be enormous. Marina looked at her son. Really looked at him. She searched his face for the boy who had cried in her arms when he scraped his knee. The boy who had helped his father plant the lemon trees. The boy who had promised at Giuseppe's funeral that he would always take care of his mama. That boy was gone. In his place sat a stranger in expensive shoes. And if I say no? Marina asked quietly. Alessandra laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. Well, that would be foolish. 'Cause honestly, Mother Marina, what choice do you have? You live here on Marco's goodwill. You don't pay rent. You don't contribute to utilities. You're basically a charity case. The words hung in the air like poison. Marco didn't contradict her. He didn't defend his mother. He just sat there, silent and complicit. Most people your age, Alessandra continued, would be grateful for any place to live, especially after being such a burden for so long. Marina stood slowly. Her legs felt weak, but she didn't let it show. She looked at her son one last time, giving him a chance to speak up, to remember who he was, to remember who she was. He said nothing. Excuse me, Marina said with quiet dignity. I need some air. She walked out onto the terrace. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Behind her, she heard Alessandra's voice, bright and satisfied. Well, that went better than expected. She'll sign by the end of the week. The woman who remembered. Marina stood at the edge of her terrace, overlooking the sea that had witnessed her entire adult life. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in colors that hurt to look at because they were so beautiful. Giuseppe used to say that God painted the sky each evening just to remind humans that beauty still existed in a hard world. She thought about everything she had endured. Her parents had been poor farmers who taught her that dignity wasn't about money. It was about how you treated others and how you treated yourself. Giuseppe had been a mason, strong and kind, who had built this villa stone by stone while Marina worked as a seamstress to save money for windows and doors. They had gone without so many things to build this dream. When Marco was born, they had stood on this very terrace, holding their tiny son, promising him a life better than their own. They had succeeded. They had given him education, opportunity, love. They had given him everything, and he had learned to value nothing. Marina walked back inside, past the dining room where Marco and Alessandra were now laughing about something on his phone. She went to her bedroom, the one she had shared with Giuseppe. She opened the old wooden chest at the foot of her bed and pulled out a metal box. Inside was her marriage certificate, her late husband's will, birth certificates, family photos, and the deed to the villa. Her name was on it. Marina Bellini. Not Marco's name, not anyone else's, just hers. Giuseppe had insisted on it before he died. "This is your security," he had told her. "No matter what happens, this is yours. Never forget that." She had never transferred it. Marco had assumed. Alessandra had assumed. But assumptions aren't the same as reality. Marina sat on her bed, holding the deed in her trembling hands. She thought about her grandmother who had survived fascism and war. She thought about her mother, who had raised 6 children on almost nothing. She thought about herself, a young girl who had learned to sew in the dark to save candle money. She came from a line of women who survived. And survival sometimes meant knowing when to fight back. The decision. That night, Marina didn't sleep. She sat in her kitchen, the one where she had fed her family for 35 years, and made a list. She was methodical, practical, just like Giuseppe had taught her. She listed assets, contacts, possibilities. At dawn, she made 3 phone calls. The first was to Roberto Castellano, Giuseppe's oldest friend and a lawyer in Rome. "Roberto," she said calmly, "I need help, and I need it to be confidential." The second was to Anna, her closest friend from the village. "Anna, I need to ask you something. Do you still have that spare room you mentioned?" The third call was the hardest. She dialed a number she had saved years ago but never thought she'd use. "Hello," she said. "I'm interested in selling my property. When can we meet?" By the time Marco and Alessandra woke up in their comfortable guest room, Marina was already dressed and making breakfast. She served them coffee and fresh bread with the same gentle smile she always wore. "Sleep well?" she asked sweetly. "Fine, Marco mumbled. Alessandra stretched like a cat. "When can we meet with your lawyer about the property transfer? I'd like to get this settled quickly. We have so many plans." "Of course," Marina said softly. "I'll arrange something very soon." She didn't tell them that she had already arranged something. She didn't tell them that the villa they were planning to steal had never actually been theirs to take. She didn't tell them that quiet old women who have survived life's hardest moments know exactly how to survive its cruelest betrayals. She just smiled and poured more coffee. Because Marina Bellini had learned something important over her 62 years. Revenge isn't about screaming or drama. True power is quiet. It's patient. It moves in silence and strikes with precision. And Marina was just getting started. The sea crashed against the cliffs below, ancient and unstoppable. Like the waves, Marina would reshape the landscape. Not with force, but with the steady, inevitable power of someone who knows exactly what she's worth. The hidden truth. The lawyer's office. 3 days after that terrible dinner, Marina sat in Roberto Castellano's office in Rome. The room smelled of old books and expensive leather. Roberto was 70 now, with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen too many family betrayals over his 40 years as a lawyer. "Marina," he said gently, spreading the villa's deed across his mahogany desk. "I need you to be absolutely certain about this. Once we start, there's no going back." Marina's hands were folded calmly in her lap. She wore her best dress, navy blue with small white buttons, the one she saved for important occasions. "I'm certain, Roberto. More certain than I've been about anything since Giuseppe died." Roberto studied her face for a long moment. He had known her since she was a young bride, had watched her struggle and survive and build a life from nothing. "Tell me everything," he said. So Marina told him. She told him about the dinner, about Alessandra's cruel words, about Marco's silence that hurt more than any insult. She told him about being called a charity case, a burden, a foolish old woman who should be grateful for scraps. Roberto's jaw tightened as he listened. And they actually believe the property is Marco's? They do, Marina said quietly. Marco thinks Giuseppe left everything to him. He never asked to see the will. He never checked the deed. He just assumed. But you never transferred ownership. Never. Giuseppe made me promise. He said, Marina, I trust our son, but life changes people. Keep this in your name. It's your security. I thought he was being paranoid. She paused, her voice catching. He wasn't. Roberto opened a thick file. I've done research on your property. Marina, do you know what your villa is worth? She shook her head. Conservative estimate? 3.2 million euros. Maybe more. The location is extraordinary. Coastal properties in that area have tripled in value over the last decade. Marina felt dizzy. She had known the villa was valuable, but hearing the number made it real. If you want to sell, Roberto continued, I have a buyer already interested, the Romano Art Foundation. They're looking for properties to convert into artist residencies. They preserve historical buildings, maintain gardens, host cultural events. They pay fair market value and they pay quickly. How quickly? I could have contracts ready in a week. Money in your account in 2 weeks. It's a cash sale. Marina took a deep breath. And Marco and Alessandra? Roberto's expression turned sharp. They have no legal claim. None. You've allowed them to stay as guests. You can revoke that permission at any time with proper notice. Legally, you need to give them 30 days. 30 days, Marina repeated. But Marina, Roberto leaned forward, his voice serious. Before you do this, I need to ask, is there any part of you that wants to reconcile? Any hope that Marco might come to his senses? Marina thought about her son. She thought about the boy who had held her hand at his father's funeral. She thought about the man who had sat silent while his wife called her a burden. I gave him chances, she said quietly. I gave him 3 days to call and apologize, to say he didn't mean it, to remember that I'm his mother. She met Roberto's eyes. He didn't call, not once. Instead, Alessandra called yesterday. She wanted to know when I would sign the papers. She said they'd already hired an architect.
Roberto nodded slowly.
Then we proceed. We proceed, Marina agreed. The memory of building. That night, Marina couldn't sleep. She walked through her villa in the darkness, running her hands along walls that held 35 years of memories. She ended up in Giuseppe's workshop, a small stone building behind the main house that still held his tools. She turned on the single light bulb. Everything was exactly as he'd left it. His hammers hung on the wall, arranged by size. His levels and measuring tapes sat on the workbench. His leather apron hung on its peg, stiff and dusty now. Marina sat on his old stool and let the memories wash over her. How the villa was born. They had been so young. Giuseppe was 28, Marina 25. They had saved for 7 years, living in a tiny apartment in the village, eating simple meals, never buying anything they didn't absolutely need. Every lira went into an old coffee tin Giuseppe kept hidden under the floorboard. One day, he would say, counting their savings by candlelight, we'll have our own place, a real home, with a view of the sea. Marina would laugh. You dream big for a mason who knows how to build dreams into reality, he'd reply, kissing her flour-dusted hands. When they finally had enough to buy the land, everyone in the village thought they were crazy. The plot was on a steep cliff, covered in wild brush and rocks. Nothing will grow there, the old men said. The wind will destroy anything you build, the women warned. But Giuseppe saw possibility where others saw problems. They built the villa themselves. Giuseppe mixed the cement, laid every stone, positioned every beam. Marina worked beside him, carrying water, mixing mortar, holding boards steady. She was 7 months pregnant with Marco when they laid the final roof tiles. Our son will be born in a house built by love, Giuseppe had said, placing his hand on her swollen belly. And he was right. Marco came into the world in the bedroom that overlooked the sea, with his father's hands catching him and his mother's tears of joy baptizing him. For 20 years, their life was beautiful. Giuseppe expanded the villa slowly, carefully, adding rooms as they could afford them. Marina planted the gardens, coaxing life from the rocky soil. She grew tomatoes, basil, rosemary, and the lemon trees that Giuseppe loved. Marco grew up running through those gardens, climbing those trees, swimming in the sea below. He was a happy child, full of laughter and questions. Giuseppe taught him to work with his hands. Marina taught him to read and dream. Education is important, Giuseppe would say. Our son will go to university. He'll have opportunities we never had. They sacrificed everything for Marco's education. New shoes for Marina? No, that money went to Marco's books. A new truck for Giuseppe? No, that money went to Marco's tuition. They never regretted it. Or so Marina thought. The heart attack. Giuseppe died on a Tuesday morning in April. He was only 57. He had been planting new lemon trees, doing what he loved. One moment he was laughing about something. The next he was clutching his chest, his face gray. Marina ran to him, screaming for help. He died in her arms, right there in the garden they had built together. The villa, he gasped with his last breaths. Promise me, never give it away. It's yours, your security.
I promise, Marina sobbed.
I promise, my love. Marco came home for the funeral. He cried. He held Marina. He said all the right things. But 2 days after they buried Giuseppe, Marco was already talking about his new job in Milan, his ambitious girlfriend Alessandra, his bright future. You'll be okay, Mama? He asked, already halfway out the door. I'll be fine, Marina said, even though she was dying inside. I'll visit soon, he promised. He didn't, not for 6 months. And when he finally came, he brought Alessandra, the wife who changed everything. First, Alessandra seemed lovely. She complimented everything, helped in the kitchen, took photos of the garden for her social media. You're so lucky to have this, Marco, she would say. It's like a dream. But Marina noticed small things. The way Alessandra's smile never reached her eyes. The way she photographed the villa from every angle, like she was studying it. The way she whispered to Marco at night, too quietly for Marina to hear. After they got married, the visits changed. Alessandra started making suggestions. Mother Marina, have you thought about updating the kitchen? These old tiles are so dated. The garden could really use professional landscaping. These wild plants make it look neglected. Maybe you should consider assisted living. All this maintenance must be exhausting at your age. Each visit, the suggestions became more pointed. The compliments became criticisms. And Marco, her sweet Marco, started to agree with his wife. She's right, Mama. You're not getting any younger. Maybe a smaller place would be easier. Marina felt herself shrinking, becoming smaller in her own home. She started apologizing for things that didn't need apologies. She started second-guessing herself. Until that dinner. Until charity case. Until burden. Until she remembered who she really was. The plan takes shape. Marina met with Roberto twice more that week. They reviewed every document, every detail. The Romano Art Foundation sent representatives to view the property. They fell in love with it immediately. This is exactly what we've been searching for, the director said. An elegant woman named Francesca. The architecture is authentic. The gardens are mature. The view is breathtaking. We would preserve everything. Your husband's workshop would become an artist's studio. The gardens would be maintained exactly as they are. His legacy would live on. Marina felt tears prick her eyes. You would keep it as it is? We would honor it, Francesca said firmly. This villa has a soul. We don't destroy souls. We celebrate them. That decided it for Marina. One condition, Marina said. I need the sale to be confidential until the contracts are signed and the money is transferred. No one can know. Not my son, not anyone. Of course, Roberto said. Standard practice for estate sales. They set the date. Papers would be signed in exactly 12 days. The architect arrives. Meanwhile, Alessandra was busy. She had hired an architect without asking Marina's permission. A slick young man named Dante arrived at the villa in a sports car, carrying rolled-up plans and an attitude of supreme confidence. "Mrs. Bellini," he said, not waiting for an invitation before walking inside. "Let me show you the exciting vision we have for your property." Marina sat silently while he spread blueprints across her dining table. The same table Giuseppe had built. The same table where they had eaten thousands of meals as a family. "We'll tear down these interior walls," Dante said enthusiastically. "Open concept is essential for a luxury hotel. The kitchen will be completely gutted and modernized. We'll add a glass elevator here, a rooftop bar here. The master bedroom becomes a spa." "And my cottage?" Marina asked quietly. "Oh, that old thing?" Dante waved dismissively. "We'll demolish it. The foundation is probably shot anyway. In its place, we'll build a modern guest cottage. Very minimalist. Very chic." "I see," Marina said. Alessandra appeared in the doorway, perfectly made up even though it was barely 9 in the morning. "Isn't it exciting, Mother Marina? We'll call it Villa Alessandra. We've already registered the trademark. Not Villa Giuseppe. Not Villa Bellini, honoring the family name.
Villa Alessandra.
Marina looked at the blueprints that would erase every trace of her husband. She looked at the young architect who saw her home as nothing but a demolition project. She looked at Alessandra, who was already imagining herself as the owner of a luxury hotel. "It's very thorough," Marina said carefully. "We start demolition in 6 weeks," Alessandra said. "So you'll need to be out in 5. I've already found you a lovely retirement home in the village. 1 room, shared bathroom, but the food is supposed to be decent. 1 room, shared bathroom. After living in a villa she built with her own hands." "Thank you for thinking of me," Marina said with a gentle smile. Alessandra missed the steel underneath the gentleness. She was too busy imagining her future empire. The warning Marina ignored. That evening, Anna came to visit. She was Marina's oldest friend, a widow herself who lived in the village. She took one look at Marina's face and pulled her into a hug. "Tell me," Anna said simply. So Marina told her everything. About the architect, about the demolition plans, about the retirement home with 1 room. Anna's face grew stormy. "You need to tell Marco the truth. You need to tell him the villa is still yours." "Why?" Marina asked. "So he can apologize? So he can promise to be better?" "Anna, I've given him a week to call me, to say he was sorry, to remember that I'm his mother. He's called 3 times. Every time, it was Alessandra, asking about paperwork. But he's your son." "He was my son," Marina said quietly. "Now he's just a stranger who looks like the boy I raised." Anna was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What are you going to do?" Marina smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, but it wasn't a sad one either. It was the smile of a woman who had made a decision and found peace in it. "I'm going to teach them a lesson about respect," Marina said, "and about assumptions." The final days. The next week passed in a strange, surreal calm. Marco and Alessandra came and went, making plans, taking measurements, arguing with contractors on the phone. They treated Marina like a ghost in her own home, barely acknowledging her presence. Marina cooked their meals. She cleaned their rooms. She tended her garden. And every night, she packed a little more of her life into boxes that she secretly moved to Anna's house. The wedding photos, Giuseppe's tools, the hand-painted dishes, the lemon tree seedlings, her grandmother's jewelry, everything that mattered, everything that held memory and love, Marina saved. Let them have the empty shell, she thought. The soul of this place is coming with me. On the 10th day, Alessandra found Marina in the garden. "Mother Marina," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We need you to sign the transfer papers tomorrow. Our lawyer will be here at 10. "Your lawyer?" Marina asked. "Well, we assumed you didn't have one," Alessandra laughed. "Why would you need one? This is all very straightforward. You sign, we take ownership. Everyone's happy." "Everyone's happy," Marina repeated. Exactly. And don't worry, we'll still let you visit sometimes. Maybe once a month? We'll have to check the hotel calendar first, of course. Once a month. To visit the home she built. That's very generous, Marina said softly. We think so too, Alessandra beamed. Tomorrow at 10 then. We're something nice. We're taking photos for our Instagram announcement. She walked away, heels clicking, already on her phone planning the social media reveal. Marina looked down at the rosemary plant in her hands. Rosemary for remembrance, Giuseppe used to say. I remember everything, my love, Marina whispered to the wind. And tomorrow, they'll learn what it means to forget. The night before. That night, Marina packed the last of her things. She stood in her bedroom, the one she had shared with Giuseppe, and said goodbye to the walls that had held their love. I'm not abandoning you, she told the villa. I'm setting you free. Someone who appreciates you will love you now. And as for our son, her voice caught. I'm letting him go. Sometimes love means knowing when to stop holding on. She slept peacefully that night, for the first time in weeks. Because tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow the storm would break. And Marina Bellini, the quiet widow they had underestimated, would remind them all that still waters run deep, and old women who have survived life's cruelties know exactly how to deliver justice. The sea crashed against the cliffs below, constant and unstoppable, just like Marina, the sweet revenge, the morning of truth. Marina woke at dawn on the day that would change everything. She dressed carefully in her best suit, the charcoal gray one she had worn to Giuseppe's funeral. She styled her silver hair neatly. She put on the pearl earrings Giuseppe had given her on their 25th anniversary. In the mirror, she saw a different woman than the one who had sat silently at that terrible dinner 2 weeks ago. This woman stood tall. This woman knew her worth. She made coffee and sat on her terrace one last time, watching the sun paint the Mediterranean in shades of rose and gold. The sea was calm today, as if holding its breath for what was to come. At 8 o'clock her phone buzzed. A text from Roberto. Everything is ready. Papers signed. Money transferred. The villa is officially sold. Foundation takes possession at noon. Are you ready? Marina typed back with steady hands. I'm ready. At 9:30, a courier arrived with a large envelope. Marina signed for it and placed it on the dining room table. The envelope was thick and official, with the seal of the Romano Art Foundation embossed in gold. At 9:45, she heard Alessandra's heels clicking down the stairs. Marco followed, yawning, checking his phone as always. Good morning, Mother Marina, Alessandra sang out cheerfully. Big day. Are you excited to finally do the right thing?
Marina smiled serenely.
Yes, she said. I'm very excited to do the right thing. Our lawyer should be here any minute, Alessandra continued, pouring herself coffee. This will be quick and painless, I promise. Just a few signatures, and then we can all move forward. Actually, Marina said quietly, I don't think your lawyer will be necessary. Alessandra frowned. What do you mean? I mean, Marina said, her voice calm as still water, that there's been a change of plans. The envelope. Marco finally looked up from his phone. What kind of change? Marina picked up the envelope from the table and held it out. This kind. Alessandra snatched it from her hands and tore it open. Her face went from confident to confused to pale in a matter of seconds. What is this? It's a notice of property sale, Marina said simply. And an eviction notice. You have 24 hours to remove your belongings from the premises. The words hung in the air like smoke. This is a joke, Alessandra said, but her voice shook. This has to be a joke. It's not a joke, Marina said. I sold the villa. The sale was completed this morning. The new owners, the Romano Art Foundation, take possession at noon today. That's in 2 hours and 15 minutes. Marco finally stood up, the papers in his hands. He was reading them now, his face going from confusion to shock to something like horror. Mama, you can't. This says the property was titled in your name. But Papa left everything to me. Everyone knows that. Your papa left you many things, Marina said gently. His tools, his books, his watch, his love. But the villa was always mine. It was titled in my name from the day we purchased the land. Your father insisted on it. He wanted me to always have security. But I live here, Marco stammered. I built my life here. You can't just. You built your life in Milan, Marina corrected. You visit here occasionally, treating my home as your vacation property. There's a difference. Alessandra's shock was transforming into rage. Her perfectly made-up face contorted with fury. You conniving old witch. You lied to us. I never lied, Marina said calmly. I never claimed to have transferred the property. You assumed. There's a difference between lies and assumptions. You let us make plans. We hired architects. We spent money. Alessandra was screaming now. You hired architects without my permission, Marina pointed out. You spent money without asking if the property was actually yours to renovate. That's not my responsibility. That's your mistake. Marco sank into a chair, his face in his hands. How could you do this, Mama? I'm your son. And there it was. The question Marina had been waiting for. The words that needed saying.